What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today I'm doing a Trickstar deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Braxton. And this deck is an amazing deck to be able to play that I've included all sorts of spicy tech cards in this build for you guys. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed card in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. And definitely give Braxton some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Trickstar Candina. This card is one of the most important cards in the entire deck and the best normal summon in this build. Then when this card is normal summon, you can add a Trickstar card from your deck to your hand. And each time your opponent activates a spell or trap card, inflict 200 points of damage to your opponent immediately after it resolves, which is a really cool ability to just constantly be burning your opponent for 200 with this card. We then play 3 copies of Trickstar Lycoris. This card is really good as a 3-of in the build, because this card has a great ability that quick effect, you can reveal this card in your hand, target a Trickstar monster that you control, except another copy of this card, special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, return that card that this card targeted back to your hand. Which is a great ability because you can actually chain multiple copies of this card to a monster, which is really cool. For example, if you have a copy of Candina on your side of the field, and you have 2 copies of Lycoris in your hand, you can actually chain both of them in the same chain to be able to target the copy of the Candina, special summon both to your side of the field, and then bounce a copy of Candina back to the hand, getting you 2 monsters on your side of the field, while also resetting your search, which is really nice. This card also has a great ability that each time a card is added to your opponent's hand, inflict 200 points of damage to your opponent for each, which is a great ability to burn your opponent for 200. We then play a single copy of Lilybell. Lilybell is a great 1-of in the deck, because if this card is added to your hand, except by drawing it, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a great ability for this card to have. And this card can also attack your opponent directly, and when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can actually target a Trickstar monster in the grave and add it back to your hand, which is a great effect for this card to have to instantly get one of your Trickstar monsters back to your hand. We then play a single copy of Korribane. Korribane is really good as a 1-of in this build because this card is basically a hand trap, which is amazing because if you control no monsters or all monsters you control are Trickstar monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And during the damage step, when a Trickstar monster battles an opponent's monster, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and that monster you control gains attack equal to its original attack until the end of the turn, which is a great ability to basically double the attack of one of your Trickstar monsters so that you can go in for game. I love that about this card, and it's just a really good 1-of in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Wind Witch Icebell. I really love the Wind Witch package in the build because it helps out so much in this deck to give you a negate. And also do burn damage, because this card is a great ability. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, then special summon a Wind Witch monster from your deck, but it cannot be tributed, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extract the turn you activate this effect, except level 5 or higher wind monsters, which is not that big of a deal to be able to do with this deck because you don't summon from the extract all that often anyways, and this card is just really good to get you to a copy of Crystal Wing while also doing some burn damage along the way. Because this card also has the ability that if this card is normal or special summon, you can actually inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent, which is a great effect for this card to have. We then play 2 copies of Wind Witch Glassbell. Glassbell is a definite 2-of in the build to help you step into a level 7 synchro play, and this card is a great ability if this card is normal or special summon, which it always will be special summon off the effect of your copy of your Ice Spell, and it has the ability that you get to add a Wind Witch monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, which is a great ability for this card to have. We then play 2 copies of Snowbell. Snowbell is also a really good 2-of in the deck that you're going to be searching off your copy of Glassbell that has the ability, if you control 2 or more wind monsters and no non-wind monsters, then you can special summon this card from your hand, and it also has the ability that a wind synchro monster that was summoned using this card as a synchro material cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, giving you some protection for your plays, which is really good. And a simple combo for the deck is to be able to special summon out your copy of Icebell, and then special summon out your copy of Glassbell Glass Bell off the Ice Bell's effect, search the copy of Snow Bell off the effect of Glass Bell while also doing 500 points of burn damage, and then special summon this card out to your side of the field, make a level 7 Synchro play using these two, and then make a Crystal Wing with whatever card you summon off the effect of these two monsters, which is amazing to be able to do. I love that about this deck, that it's so consistent, and then you can go in for your copy of your Trickstar plays because you didn't even waste your normal summon, giving you some protection for this deck. We then play 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird is insane as a 3 of hand trap in the deck, and this is the most powerful card in the deck and pretty much a guaranteed staple inside of any Trickstar deck, because you can combo it with cards like Reincarnation to rip your opponent's entire hand, which is crazy powerful to do, because once your opponent searches one card from their deck, you basically just flip up this card, chain Droll, they'll get rid of their whole hand, and then they won't get to draw, which is crazy about this deck. And I love that about these cards combined with Droll and Lockbird, because it's just absolutely crazy that you can get rid of your opponent's entire hand, which is just really good. Droll and Lockbird is a definite 3 of in the deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start off with a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is very important in this deck as a 1-of, just to stop your opponent from hand trapping you while you're going in for all of your plays. We then play a single copy of Terraforming. Terraforming is amazing as a 1-of in the deck because this card is literally the searcher for the searcher. We then play 3 copies of Light Stage. Light Stage is the Rhoda for the deck, and this card is crazy powerful in this build because when this card is activated, you can add a Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand, basically being the Rhoda for the deck with added effects, because it also has the ability that once per turn, you can target one set card in your opponent's spell and trap card zone, and while this card is in the field spell zone, that set card cannot be activated until the end phase, and if your opponent must activate that card during the end phase or else send it to the graveyard, which is a really cool ability for this card to have. And each time a Trickstar monster that you control inflicts effect damage to your opponent, inflict an additional 200 points of damage to your opponent, which is really good to just stack extra damage to your opponent off this card's ability. We then play 3 copies of Scapegoat. Scapegoat is really good in this deck as a 3-of, just to give you a bunch of tokens on your side of the field, because again, we're not summoning from the extract on the very first turn that much, so this card is just really good at being defensive, and then during the follow-up turn, being able to activate this card during the opponent's turn, because it is a quick play spell to be able to get you into a bunch of link plays using your Scapegoat tokens. I really love that about the deck, and a really good opening hand is actually opening up your copy of your Ice Bell, so you can special summon it and go in for Crystal Wing and setting this card to your side of the field, and then during the opponent's turn, flipping this card face up and then climbing into your link plays, which is why it's very important to not put your copy of Crystal Wing in the extra monster zone, so you can activate the copy of Scapegoat and then go in for your link plays during the follow-up turn, so you can actually keep the copy of Crystal Wing. We then play 3 copies of Dark Room of Nightmare. This card is a crazy powerful 3-of that each time your opponent takes damage from a card effect, except Dark Room of Nightmare, inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent, essentially turning all of your Trickstar cards' effects into 500 points of burn damage instead of 2, which is really good and basically can end games extremely quickly. And the really cool thing is your Wind Witch package also does burn damage, making this card even crazier to be able to go in for game. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is very important as a 2-of in the deck to basically just turn all of your trap cards into basically 4s and 5s of in the deck, because you can banish a normal trap from the deck to be able to set one of the same name to your side of the field, but you can only activate one more trap for the rest of the turn. We then play 2 copies of Grave Trap Hole. I love this card as a 2-of in the deck because this card is basically like Called by the Grave, which is really cool. It even has the hand of Called by the Grave in the artwork, which is kind of cool, is when your opponent activates a monster effect in their hand or graveyard, basically if they hand trap you, you can actually activate the ability, or when your opponent banishes a monster by a card effect is activated, you negate its effect, and if you do, inflict 2,000 points of damage to your opponent, which is crazy powerful just to do 2,000 points of burn damage to your opponent, while also usually just stopping a hand trap off this card's ability, which is amazing to be able to do with this card. This card is a definite 2-of in the deck, and it's just really good at stopping your your opponent while also doing extra burn damage. I've won a lot of games actually with this card because of your Trickstar's burn, and then this card just doing the last 2,000 that you needed. We then play 2 copies of Disturbance Strategy. This card is really cool in the deck as a 2-of because your opponent puts all their cards in his or her hand back into the deck and then shuffles the deck and then draws the same number of cards, which is really cool to be able to do with this card. They basically just shuffle their entire hand back into the deck and then draw the same number of cards because it works with your copy of Lycris to be able to burn your opponent, and you can even use it with Droll and Lockbird to lock down your opponent, which is really cool. We then play 2 copies of Present Card. Present Card is really good because your opponent discards their entire hand and then draws 5 cards, which with your copy of Lycris will do burn damage, which is why we play this card as a 2-of in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Trickstar Reincarnation. Trickstar Reincarnation is crazy powerful because you banish your opponent's entire hand and then they draw the same number of cards, which is really cool to be able to combo with your copy of your Droll and Lockbird to basically just get rid of your opponent's entire hand so that they don't draw any cards. Basically with any of these cards, it combos that way, which is just really cool. I love that about this deck, and it's really amazing just to be able to rip your opponent's entire hand. And this card is also great because you can banish this card from the graveyard and then target a Trickstar monster in the grave and special summon it back to your side of the field. So it even works like a Monster Reborn, which is making this card a definite 3-of in the deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start with a single copy of Trickstar Holly Angel. Holly Angel is a really good one in the deck because this card can get absolutely massive because each time your Trickstar monster inflicts damage to your opponent, this card actually gains that damage that they took as attack points, making this card get huge on your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Crimson Heart. Crimson Heart is really good as a 1-of in the deck because this card can actually let you draw cards, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax because this card is super easy to put on your side of the field, and the reason we actually play the copies of Scapegoat, because it's very easy to make this card by making a copy of IP Masquerena and a copy of Mrs. Radiant in the deck, making it very easy to step into this card and make it absolutely crazy powerful to deal with for your opponent. We then play a single copy of Access Code. Access Code is very easy to summon in this deck as well, and it's really good in this particular build and one of the best generic Link monsters in the game. We then play a single copy of Appaloosa so we can have a card to have multiple negates on the field, and it's very easy to summon in this build. 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff, and 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix to pop spells and traps. We then play a single copy of the Light Charmer. This card is great as a 1-of in the deck because it's very easy to summon this card to your side of the field using your Trickstar cards. We then play a single copy of Mrs. Radiant. Mrs. Radiant is great as a 1-of in the build to be able to use your GOAT tokens to step into this card. We then play a single copy of IP Masquerena because you can use this card plus your copy of Mrs. Radiant to step into your copy of your Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax, or you can use this card to step into Nightmare Unicorn during the opponent's turn to spin a card off the field. We then play a single copy of Linkuriboh. Linkuriboh is great as a 1-of in the build to be able to use with your copies of your GOAT tokens. I really like this card as a 1-of in the deck. We then play a single copy of Crystal Wing. Crystal Wing is usually the end goal of your Wind Witch package, making this card a definite 1-of in the build to give you a monster negate. We then play a single copy of Diamond Bell. Diamond Bell is great in this build as a 1-of because if this card is Synchro Summon, you can target a Wind Witch monster in your graveyard and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half that monster's attack, which is really good to be able to use with your copy of Winter Bell because it'll actually take 1,200 points of damage, giving you a lot of burn damage off this card's ability. You can also pop cards on the field because once per turn, if your opponent takes battle or effect damage, you can actually target 1 card on the field and destroy it. And if this card, or if you control this card that was Synchro Summoned using only Wind Witch monsters, which it will be, you can actually use the effect that you can use this effect twice per turn, which is a great ability. We then play 2 copies of Winter Bell. Winter Bell is really good as a 2 in the deck. You can actually go through the Wind Witch line twice because I played 2 copies of Snow Bell in the deck, which is really good. But this card actually does burn damage because it has the ability once per turn you can actually target a Wind Witch monster in the graveyard and inflict damage to your opponent equal that monster's level times 200, which will do usually about 800 points of burn damage to your opponent because you have a level 4 that you're going to use to go into this card, which is really good. So that's going to do it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Trickstar before, you should definitely give this deck a try because it's a very fun deck to basically just go in for game with all the burn damage you can do against the opponent. It's really crazy how Droll works in this deck, and it's super fun to be able to play with the Winwitch package in this build. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.